"You don't remember me, do you?" the woman whispered into his ear. Every morning he came. Every morning she sat there. A middle-aged man helping a blind woman in a wheelchair cross the street, not knowing she recognized him from the first touch of his hand on the rail. He froze. Who was this woman? And why did the sound of her voice make his hands shake, with a fear he thought he'd buried 15 years ago? Michael woke at 5:30 every morning. The alarm never went off because he was always awake before it could. He lay in the dark, listening to the house settle, then rose and dressed in the clothes he'd laid out the night before. Jeans, work boots, a flannel shirt that smelled faintly of sawdust, no matter how many times it went through the wash. In the kitchen, he made coffee and started breakfast. 2 eggs, toast, a bowl of fruit for Sophie. She was 16 now, and ate like she was still growing, which maybe she was. He set the table and stood by the stove waiting for the eggs to finish, watching steam rise from the pan. The house was small, 2 bedrooms in a neighborhood where the houses all looked the same, built in the 1970s with narrow driveways and chain-link fences. He'd bought it 8 years ago after the divorce, after his ex-wife got sick, after everything fell apart in ways he still didn't talk about. It was enough. A roof, a yard, a place for Sophie to call home. She came downstairs at 6:15, backpack slung over one shoulder, hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Morning, Dad." Michael smiled. "Morning, kiddo. Sleep okay?" Sophie shrugged and sat down at the table. She poured orange juice and started eating, scrolling through her phone with one hand. He didn't mind. She was a good Z-kid. Quiet, like him. She did her homework, kept her room clean, never asked for much. "You working late today?" Sophie asked between bites. "Probably. Got a cabinet job that's taking longer than I thought." "Okay, I'll heat up leftovers." He nodded and drank his coffee. Outside, the sky was turning pale gray. He checked the clock on the microwave. 6:45. Time to go. They left the house together and walked 3 blocks to the bus stop where Sophie caught her ride to school. Michael always walked her there, even though she said she didn't need him to anymore. It was habit, one he wasn't ready to break. The street was quiet. A few cars passed. A neighbor walked a dog. Everything looked normal, orderly, safe. That's what Michael liked about this place. Nothing happened here. No one knew who he used to be. At the corner, Sophie stopped and turned to him. "You're a good dad," she said suddenly. Michael blinked. What brought that on? She smiled a little. "I don't know. Just wanted to say it." The bus pulled up before he could respond. Sophie climbed on, waved through the window, and disappeared into a row of seats. Michael stood there until the bus turned to the corner, then started walking back. That's when he saw her. A woman sat in a wheelchair at the intersection 1 block over. She wore dark sunglasses even though the morning light was still dim. Her hands rested on the armrests of the chair, fingers curled slightly inward. The wheelchair itself looked old. The rubber on one wheel was splitting. The frame had rust spots along the base. She wasn't moving, just sitting there, facing the crosswalk. Michael slowed his steps. Something about her made his chest tighten. He didn't know why. He'd never seen her before. But then she turned her head slightly, as if she'd heard him, and he felt a chill crawl up the back of his neck. He kept walking, told himself it was nothing. Just a woman waiting to cross the street. Still, when he got home, he stood in the kitchen for a long time, holding his empty coffee cup, staring at the wall, trying to remember if he'd ever seen that face before. He hadn't. But something about her felt familiar anyway. The next morning, she was there again. Michael walked Sophie to the bus stop like always, and when the bus pulled away, he turned and saw the woman in the same spot. Same wheelchair, same dark sunglasses, same stillness. This time, he didn't walk past. He crossed the street and stopped a few feet away. "Excuse me," Michael said. "Do you need help?" The woman didn't answer right away. She tilted her head slightly, as if listening to something only she could hear. Then she spoke. "Yes, if you don't mind." Her voice was soft, calm. It didn't match the tension Michael felt building in his chest. "Where are you trying to go?" he asked. "Across the street. I wait here every morning, but the light changes too fast." Michael looked at the crosswalk. The light gave about 30 seconds. Not much time for someone in a wheelchair, especially one with wheels that looked like they might catch on the uneven pavement. "I can help you," he said. He stepped behind the chair and gripped the handles. They were cold under his palms, the rubber worn smooth. He pushed gently, testing the weight, then moved forward when the light changed. The chair rolled unevenly. One wheel pulled slightly to the left. Michael adjusted his grip and kept the pace steady. When they reached the other side, he stopped. "Thank you," the woman said. Michael stepped back. "No problem." He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "You're very kind." He looked back. She was still facing forward, her hands folded in her lap. There was something about the way she sat, perfectly still, like she was waiting for something. "It's nothing," Michael said. "It's not nothing," the woman replied. "Most people walk past." Michael didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded, even though she couldn't see it, and walked away. That became the routine. Every morning after Sophie got on the bus, Michael crossed the street and helped the woman in the wheelchair. She was always there, always waiting. She never told him her name, and he never asked. She only ever said, "Thank you." Sophie noticed after the third day. "Who's that lady you've been helping?" she asked at breakfast. "Just someone who needs a hand crossing the street," Michael said. Sophie smiled. "That's really nice, Dad. I'm proud of you." The words hit him harder than they should have. He looked down at his plate and nodded. "Thanks, kiddo." 2 weeks passed. The routine continued. Michael stopped thinking about it. It was just something he did now. Part of the morning. Push the chair across the street, say goodbye, go to work. But then one morning, something changed. It was raining. Not hard, but steady enough that the pavement was slick and the crosswalk painted lines were slippery. Michael brought an umbrella. He held it over the woman as he pushed the chair, moving slower than usual because the wheel slipped on the wet ground. Halfway across, she spoke. "You still drink your coffee black, don't you?" "No sugar." Michael's hands tightened on the chair handles. He almost stopped walking. "What?" he said. "Your coffee," the woman said. Her voice hadn't changed. Still calm, still soft. "You never liked sugar." Michael's throat went dry. They reached the other side of the street, and he stepped back, staring at her. "How do you know that?" The woman turned her head slightly, just enough that he could see the faint outline of a scar running from her temple down to her jawline, hidden beneath the edge of her sunglasses. "Because I've known you for a long time," she said. Michael took another step back. "I think you have me confused with someone else." "No," the woman said quietly. "I don't." Michael didn't go back the next morning. He told himself it was because he had an early job site meeting. That wasn't true. He just couldn't face her. Couldn't face the way she'd said those words like she knew him, like she'd been waiting all this time to say them. Sophie noticed at breakfast. "You're not walking me to the bus today." "I've got to leave early," Michael said, avoiding her eyes. "You'll be okay on your own, right?" Sophie frowned. "Yeah, but what about that lady? She's probably waiting for you." Michael's jaw tightened. "She'll be fine. Someone else will help her." But Sophie kept looking at him, and he could see the confusion in her face, the disappointment. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine," Michael said. He grabbed his keys off the counter and headed for the door. "I'll see you tonight." He didn't wait for her to respond. At work, he couldn't focus. He measured a board 3 times and cut it wrong anyway. His boss asked if something was wrong. Michael said he was tired. The boss didn't push it, but Michael could tell he didn't believe him. By the time he got home that evening, Sophie was already in her room doing homework. He knocked on her door. "Hey, sorry about this morning." Sophie looked up from her desk. "It's okay." "No, it's not. I should have walked you." She shrugged. "I'm not a little kid anymore, Dad. I can get to the bus by myself." Michael nodded, but he didn't leave. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, trying to find the right words. "That lady asked about you," Sophie said. Michael's chest tightened. "What?" "I saw her on my way to the bus. She asked where you were." "What did you tell her?" "That you had to leave early for work." Sophie tilted her head. "Dad, do you know her?" "No," Michael said quickly. "I don't." Sophie didn't look convinced, but she didn't push it. She went back to her homework, and Michael closed the door. That night, he barely slept. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to convince himself that the woman was confused, that she had him mixed up with someone else, that there was no way she could actually know him. But her voice kept replaying in his head. "You still drink your coffee black, don't you?" The next morning, Sophie was already dressed and waiting by the door when Michael came downstairs. "I'm walking you today," he said. Sophie smiled. "Good." They walked together in silence. When they reached the bus stop, Michael's eyes went automatically to the intersection 1 block over. She was there. Sophie followed his gaze. "You should go help her." Michael's hands curled into fists at his sides. "Yeah, I will." The bus came. Sophie got on. Michael waited until it pulled away, then walked slowly toward the intersection. The woman sat in her wheelchair, facing the crosswalk. When Michael stopped beside her, she didn't turn her head. "I didn't think you'd come back," she said. Michael's throat felt tight. "I almost didn't." "But you did." "Because my daughter asked me to." He swallowed hard. "Who are you?" The woman was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached up and slowly removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were clouded, pale gray, unfocused. She was looking at him, but not seeing him. "You don't remember me, do you?" she said softly. Michael stared at her face, at the scar, at the shape of her jaw. Something stirred in the back of his mind. Something old and buried. "I don't know you," he said, but his voice cracked. The woman's hands rested on the armrests of her wheelchair. Her fingers trembled slightly. "These wheels," she said quietly, "replaced the legs I lost because of you. These eyes stopped seeing because of you. My life," her voice broke, "my life ended because of you." Michael felt the ground tilt beneath him. His vision blurred. His hands went numb. "I don't," he started, but he couldn't finish, because now, looking at her face, he did remember. He remembered everything. And he turned and ran. Michael made it home before his legs gave out. He locked the door behind him and leaned against it, chest heaving, hands shaking so badly he could barely turn the deadbolt. The kitchen looked the same as it had an hour ago. Coffee cup in the sink, Sophie's cereal bowl on the counter. Everything ordinary, everything normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. He walked to his bedroom and stood in front of the closet. The shoebox sat on the top shelf, pushed all the way to the back. He'd put it there 8 years ago and hadn't touched it since. His hands were still shaking when he pulled it down. Inside were things he'd told himself he'd thrown away. A folder of documents, photographs, newspaper clippings yellowed at the edges. He sat on the floor and spread them out in front of him, and the past came flooding back whether he wanted it to or not. 15 years ago, he'd been a different person. Michael Hayes, structural engineer. Working on a bridge construction project that was 6 months behind schedule and $2 million over budget. The pressure came from everywhere. The contractor, the city, his own boss, who called him every night asking why things weren't moving faster. Michael had been good at his job, good enough to know when corners were being cut, good enough to see that the scaffolding going up on the south end didn't meet safety specifications. But when he raised concerns, his boss told him to sign off on it anyway, told him they'd fix it later, told him the schedule couldn't wait. So Michael signed. He told himself it would be fine, that they'd reinforce it before anyone got hurt, that he was just doing his job. 3 weeks later, it rained. Not a storm, just steady rain that made the ground soft and the metal slick. A 22-year-old architecture intern named Claire Pearson had been working on the scaffolding that afternoon, taking measurements for a project report. She was supposed to be supervised, but her supervisor had left early. No one was watching when the scaffolding gave way. Michael had been in the site office when he heard the screaming. By the time he got outside, she was already buried under twisted metal and wooden planks. It took 40 minutes to pull her out. Michael had been one of the men digging. He remembered the rain, the blood, the way her hand felt when he gripped it as they loaded her onto the stretcher. He remembered riding in the ambulance, holding her hand the whole way, telling her she'd be okay. But she wasn't okay. Skull fracture, spinal damage, shattered pelvis. She spent 8 months in the hospital. When she came out, she couldn't see, couldn't walk. The doctors said the injuries were permanent. Her family had been poor, working class. They couldn't afford a lawyer good enough to fight the construction company. Michael had watched from a distance as they settled for a fraction of what they deserved, just enough to cover medical bills and nothing more. And Michael had kept his mouth shut. When investigators came, he'd handed over the falsified inspection reports his boss had prepared, reports that blamed the subcontractor, reports that made it look like the scaffolding had been approved by someone else, reports that cleared Michael of any responsibility. No one ever proved otherwise. Michael kept his job for another year, then quit, told people the stress was too much, moved to a different state, started over, met a woman, got married, had Sophie, built a life that looked clean and simple and safe. But he never forgot. He never forgot the sound Claire Pearson made when they pulled her out of the rubble. Never forgot the way her parents looked at him in the hospital waiting room, like he might have answers. Never forgot the moment he chose to lie. Now, sitting on his bedroom floor surrounded by old photographs and documents, Michael looked at a picture of Claire before the accident. She was smiling, young, standing in front of a blueprint, wearing a hard hat and holding a pencil. She'd wanted to be an architect. Michael put his head in his hands and tried to breathe. That night, when Sophie came home from school, she found him still sitting on the floor. The shoebox was open. Papers were scattered everywhere. "Dad?" Sophie's voice was small. "What's wrong?" Michael looked up at her, his daughter, his good, kind, trusting daughter who thought he was a good man. "Nothing," he said. His voice sounded hollow. "Just sorting through some old things." Sophie didn't believe him. He could see it in her face. But she didn't ask again. Michael didn't sleep. He sat in the kitchen until dawn, drinking coffee and staring at the photograph of Claire from 15 years ago. When the sun came up, he knew what he had to do. He found her at the intersection just after 6:30. She was sitting in her wheelchair, facing the crosswalk like she'd been waiting for him. Michael approached slowly. His legs felt heavy. His throat was dry. "How long have you known?" he asked. Claire turned her head toward his voice. "That it was you?" "Yes." "From the first time you touched my wheelchair," Claire said quietly. "You push it the same way you did when you helped load me into the ambulance. Your left hand grips tighter than your right. You always have." Michael felt something crack inside his chest. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted to see if you'd remember me on your own." "I didn't," Michael said. His voice broke. "Not until you told me." Claire's hands rested in her lap. She wasn't wearing her sunglasses today. Her clouded eyes stared past him at nothing. "Do you know what happened to me after the accident?" she asked. Michael shook his head. then realized she couldn't see it. No. I was in the hospital for 8 months. When I came out, I couldn't see, couldn't walk. My parents spent everything they had on medical bills. We hired a lawyer, but he said we didn't have a case. The reports all said the scaffolding was approved, that it was the subcontractor's fault, that no one at the main company was responsible. Michael's hands curled into fists. Claire, my father died 3 years later, Claire continued. Her voice was steady, but there was something brittle underneath it. Heart attack. The doctor said it was stress. My mother lasted another 2 years after that. She just gave up. Michael couldn't speak, couldn't move. I live alone now, Claire said, in a 4th-floor walk-up with no elevator. Every day, a neighbor has to carry me down the stairs so I can sit outside. Every night, they carry me back up. I work from home doing medical transcription because that's all I'm qualified for now. I make just enough to pay rent and eat. She turned her face toward him, and even though she couldn't see him, Michael felt like she was looking straight into him. I wanted to be an architect, Claire said. Did you know that? Yes, Michael whispered. I knew. I had a scholarship to graduate school. I had a future. And then one day it rained, and everything ended. Michael dropped to his knees beside her wheelchair. The pavement was cold and rough under him. He didn't care. I'm sorry, he said. The words felt useless, tiny, meaningless. Claire, I'm so sorry. I should have done something. I should have told the truth. I should have. You should have, Claire agreed. Her voice was quiet. But you didn't. Michael's throat closed. Tears burned behind his eyes, but he couldn't let them fall. He didn't deserve to cry. Why are you here? He asked finally. Why now? Because I wanted you to see me, Claire said simply. I wanted you to know that I'm still here, that I didn't just disappear, that the choice you made didn't just go away. Michael looked up at her. Do you want me to confess? Go to the police? I will. I'll do whatever you want. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. I don't want revenge, she said. I just wanted you to stop pretending you didn't remember. I do remember, Michael said. His voice was raw. I remember every day. Every single day. Then why did you run? Because I'm a coward. Michael's hands were shaking again. Because I didn't want my daughter to know what kind of man her father really is. Claire's expression didn't change. What kind of man is that? The kind who saves himself and lets other people suffer for it. The words hung in the air between them. The traffic light changed. Cars passed. The world kept moving. Finally, Claire spoke. I don't need your apology, she said. But your daughter needs to know the truth about who you are, about what you did. Because if you keep hiding it, you're still lying. And that's worse than anything you did 15 years ago. Michael stood slowly. His legs felt weak. If I tell her, he said, I'll lose her. Claire turned her wheelchair slightly, preparing to leave. Then maybe you were never really hers to begin with. Michael tried to keep things normal. He went to work. He made dinner. He asked Sophie about school. But she knew something was wrong. She'd known since the morning she found him on the bedroom floor surrounded by old papers. 3 days after his conversation with Claire, Sophie came home early. Michael was in the garage working on a bookshelf repair. He heard the front door open and close, then footsteps upstairs. Then silence. He kept working, sanding down a rough edge on the wood, trying not to think about anything except the grain under his hands. Then Sophie called down from upstairs. Dad, can you come here? Her voice sounded strange, flat. Michael set down the sandpaper and climbed the stairs. Sophie's bedroom door was open. She was sitting on her bed, holding the shoebox. Michael's stomach dropped. Where did you get that? It was in your closet, Sophie said. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the photograph in her hands. The one of Claire before the accident, smiling in front of a blueprint. Who is she? Sophie, that's private. Who is she? Sophie's voice was louder now. She finally looked up, and Michael saw something in her face he'd never seen before. Anger. Betrayal. Michael couldn't speak. His throat had closed. Sophie pulled out another photograph. This one showed the construction site. Yellow caution tape. Emergency vehicles. A date stamp in the corner from 15 years ago. Is this why you quit being an engineer? Sophie asked. Michael nodded slowly. Yes. What happened? There was an accident. What kind of accident? Michael sat down on the edge of her bed. His hands were shaking again. The kind I could have prevented. Sophie looked down at the photographs, then back at him. The woman you've been helping. The one in the wheelchair. Is that her? Michael closed his eyes. Yes. Does she know what you did? Yes. And you've just been, what? Pushing her across the street every morning like that makes up for it? No. Michael's voice cracked. Nothing makes up for it. Sophie stood up, still holding the photograph. Her hands were trembling. You told me you quit because of stress. You said the job was too much. You never said. She stopped, shaking her head. You lied to me. Sophie, how bad was it? What happened to her? Michael couldn't look at his daughter. He stared at the floor instead. She was 22, an intern. The scaffolding collapsed. She was buried under it. And she spent 8 months in the hospital. When she came out, she couldn't see, couldn't walk. She lost everything. Sophie's face went pale. Because of you. Because I signed off on unsafe equipment. Because I cared more about keeping my job than doing the right thing. Did you go to jail? No. Why not? Because I lied about it. Michael finally looked up at her. I falsified reports, blamed someone else, covered my tracks, and I got away with it. Sophie dropped the photograph like it had burned her. She backed away from him, her eyes wide. I don't know who you are, she whispered. Sophie, please. You're not the person I thought you were. You're not. Her voice broke. Mom would have been so disappointed in you. The words hit Michael like a physical blow. He stood up, reaching for her, but Sophie moved away. Don't touch me. Sophie, I know what I did was wrong. Wrong? Sophie's voice rose. You destroyed someone's life and then you ran away and pretended it never happened. You've been lying to me for my entire life. I wanted to protect you. From what? From knowing that my father is a coward? Michael flinched. The word hung between them. Sophie grabbed her backpack off the bed and started shoving clothes into it. What are you doing? Michael asked. I'm staying at Aunt Rachel's. Sophie, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Sophie zipped up the backpack and slung it over her shoulder. She looked at him one more time, and Michael saw tears streaming down her face. I can't be here right now. I can't look at you. She walked past him toward the door. Michael followed her down the stairs. Sophie, please. Let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Sophie stopped at the front door and turned back. That woman you've been helping, does she know you have a daughter? I don't know. Maybe you should tell her, Sophie said coldly. Maybe she deserves to know that you actually care about someone. She walked out and slammed the door behind her. Michael stood in the empty house listening to the silence. Then he sat down on the floor and finally let himself cry. Sophie didn't come home that night. Or the next night. Michael called her phone 14 times. She didn't answer. He texted her. No response. Finally, he called Rachel, his late wife's sister. She's here, Rachel said. Her voice was cold. She told me what happened. Can I talk to her? She doesn't want to talk to you. Rachel, please. Michael, I've known you for 18 years. I watched you marry my sister. I watched you raise Sophie. And I never once thought you were capable of something like this. I was going to tell her eventually. When? When she was 30? When you were dying? When exactly were you planning to stop lying? Michael didn't have an answer. Sophie needs time, Rachel said. Don't call her. Don't come here. When she's ready, she'll reach out. Rachel hung up. Michael sat in the kitchen and stared at his phone. The house felt wrong without Sophie in it. Too quiet. Too empty. Like all the life had been sucked out of it. He went to work the next day because he didn't know what else to do. But his hands wouldn't stop shaking. He measured wrong. Cut wrong. His boss pulled him aside at lunch. Hayes, what's going on with you? Family stuff, Michael said. I'm sorry. I'll do better. You need to take some time off? Michael shook his head. I need to work. But that afternoon, one of the other workers approached him in the parking lot, a younger guy named Connor, who Michael had worked with for 3 years. Hey, is it true what they're saying about you? Connor asked. Michael's stomach dropped. What are they saying? That you used to be an engineer, that someone got hurt on your site and you covered it up. Where did you hear that? Connor shrugged. Around. Someone knows someone who knew you back then. Is it true? Michael could have denied it, could have said it was a misunderstanding, could have lied one more time. Instead, he said, yes. Connor's expression hardened. Man, that's messed up. He walked away. By the end of the week, the whole crew knew. Michael's boss called him into the office. I'm going to have to let you go, he said. I can't have this kind of thing attached to my company. You understand? Michael nodded. I understand. He cleaned out his toolbox and left. On the drive home, he thought about Claire, about where she lived, about the stairs she had to be carried up and down every single day because there was no elevator. He pulled over and looked up her address in the old documents from the shoebox. It wasn't far. A 10-minute drive. The building was exactly as she'd described it. 4 stories, brick facade, no ramp, no accessibility features. Michael sat in his truck staring up at the windows and wondered which one was hers. Then he got out and went inside. The stairwell was narrow and dim. The handrail was loose. By the time Michael reached the 4th floor, he was breathing hard. He found Claire's door and knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Claire, it's Michael. I just want to talk. Still nothing. Michael stood there for a long moment, then turned and went back downstairs. He sat on the front steps and waited. 2 hours later, a middle-aged woman came up the street pushing Claire's wheelchair. When she saw Michael, she stopped. Who are you? The woman asked. A friend, Michael said, then corrected himself. Someone who knows her. She's not here. Had to go to the hospital. Michael stood up quickly. What happened? She fell. Yesterday. Going down the stairs. Neighbor who usually helps her wasn't around, so she tried to do it herself. Broke 3 ribs. Michael felt the air leave his lungs. Is she okay? She's alive, if that's what you're asking. But she told me if anyone came looking for her, to tell them to leave her alone. The woman pushed the empty wheelchair past him and into the building. Michael walked back to his truck. He sat behind the wheel for a long time, not moving, not thinking, just existing in the wreckage of everything he'd destroyed. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. It said, I need you to know that I love you, but I don't know if I can forgive you. Michael read it 3 times. Then he put his phone down and drove to the hospital. The hospital wouldn't let Michael see her. He sat in the waiting room for 3 hours before a nurse finally told him that Claire had given explicit instructions not to allow visitors. I just need to know if she's okay, Michael said. The nurse's expression softened. She has 3 broken ribs and a concussion. She'll recover. But She doesn't want to see you. Michael drove home and sat in his empty house. No Sophie, no job, no way to make anything right. The next morning, he pulled out all the documents from the shoebox, the original safety reports, the ones that showed the scaffolding had failed inspection, the ones his boss had told him to bury. He'd kept copies all these years. Michael called the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. When he finally got through to someone, he said the words he should have said 15 years ago. "My name is Michael Hayes. I was the structural engineer on the Riverside Bridge project in 2010. I falsified safety reports that led to a scaffolding collapse. Someone was permanently injured because of what I did. I want to confess." Silence on the other end. Then, "Sir, are you aware this could result in criminal charges?" "Yes," Michael said. "I'm aware." He drove to the federal building and told the truth about the pressure, about signing off on unsafe equipment, about Claire, about the lie he'd been living. "Why are you coming forward now?" the investigator asked. Michael thought about Claire at the intersection every morning, about Sophie calling him a coward. "Because I'm tired of pretending I'm someone I'm not." The investigation took 3 weeks. Finally, they called him back. "The statute of limitations has expired for criminal prosecution," the investigator said. "But we're reopening the civil case. Ms. Pearson can pursue compensation. We're also revoking your engineering license permanently." "I understand," Michael said. The lawsuit came. $1.7 million in damages. Michael's lawyer told him he'd have to declare bankruptcy, sell the house. "Do it," Michael said. The house went up for sale. Michael moved into a small apartment. 1 bedroom, cheap rent. He took carpentry jobs for cash and drove past Sophie's school one afternoon, watching her get on the bus. He didn't approach, just watched until she was gone. That night, he got a text from an unknown number. "The hearing is next Tuesday at 10. You should be there." Michael texted back, "I'll be there." Michael sat in the back row of the courtroom. Claire came in 20 minutes later, wheeled up the aisle by a woman he didn't recognize. She didn't look in his direction. The judge called the case. Claire's attorney presented everything: the reports, Michael's confession, the medical records. Then the judge turned to Michael. "Does the defendant wish to make a statement?" Michael stood. His voice was rough but steady. "Everything in those reports is true. I knew the scaffolding wasn't safe, and I signed off on it anyway. When Claire got hurt, I lied. I blamed other people. I protected myself." He looked at Claire. "For 15 years, I told myself I'd moved on, that I was a good father and a hard worker. But I wasn't a good person. I was just good at hiding what I'd done." His hands gripped the table. "I can't give you back what you lost, but I can tell you that I'm sorry and that you were right. I needed to stop running." The judge delivered the ruling. The construction company owed $800,000. Michael owed $300,000. His wages would be garnished indefinitely. After the hearing, Michael approached Claire in the hallway. He knelt beside her wheelchair. "I used the last of my money to install a wheelchair lift in your building," he said. "You won't have to be carried anymore." Claire's expression didn't change. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." "I don't hate you," Claire said quietly. "I never did. I just needed you to see me, to acknowledge that what happened to me mattered." "It matters," Michael said. "You matter." Claire reached into her bag and pulled out folded papers, blueprints. "Adaptive furniture," she said. "Desks, shelves, things people like me can actually use. I've been designing them for years." Michael unfolded them. The designs were detailed, professional, beautiful. "You want me to build these?" "I want you to help people who are going through what I went through," Claire said. "If you're serious about doing better, then do something that actually matters." "I'll do it." The woman started pushing Claire toward the exit. Just before they left, Claire spoke without turning around. Your daughter called me last week. She wanted to apologize. I told her she didn't need to." Michael's chest tightened. "What did she say?" "That she was trying to figure out how to forgive you. I told her to take her time." 6 months later, Michael rented a small workshop and started building. He followed Claire's blueprints exactly. Desks for people in wheelchairs, adjustable shelves, kitchen carts. He sold them for cost, or gave them away. Claire came by once a week to check his work and bring new designs. They didn't talk much, just worked. But there was something peaceful about it. One evening in late October, Michael heard footsteps. He turned and saw Sophie standing in the doorway. "Hey, Dad," she said quietly. Michael's throat closed. "Hey, kiddo." Sophie looked around the workshop, at the half-finished bookshelf, at the blueprints on the wall. "Aunt Rachel told me what you've been doing," she said. "That you sold the house, that you're paying Claire back." "I am." Sophie's eyes were red. "I'm still angry at you. I don't know if that's going to change." "I know. You have every right to be. But I also know what you're doing now is hard, and you didn't have to do any of it." "I did have to. I should have done it 15 years ago." Sophie stepped closer. "I miss you. I miss living at home. The house is sold. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment now. I don't care. I'll sleep on the couch." "Are you sure?" "No," Sophie said honestly. "But I think we should try." She hugged him. Michael held his daughter like she might disappear. The next morning, Claire came by and Michael introduced her to Sophie. "Your father is a good carpenter," Claire said. "He always was," Sophie replied. Claire smiled slightly. "But now he's using it for something that matters." Sophie looked at Michael. There was still hurt in her eyes, still uncertainty. But there was something else too. "Yeah," Sophie said quietly. "He is." Outside, the city was waking up. People were crossing streets, living their lives. And for the first time in 15 years, Michael felt like he was actually living his too. Not running, not hiding, just living. Honestly, with all its weight.